Pleasure now. It's the principal. Of course, I am quote unquote the honorable somehow. He is semi-pro, Mikey Dominic, and more importantly, our guest, because that's what it is all about. And we have Mr. Ryan French, who's also Mr. Monday Q Info. And Mikey, we were talking a little earlier today. Give us a little background how you guys met. And then Ryan, I want to hear from you how you really got started from playing golf at Michigan State to where you find yourself now.
I mean, I met Ryan probably 5 or 6 years ago on Twitter on the mini tour grind.
Yeah.
And I just remember I was on one morning and scrolling through social media and saw that he was posting a lot of stories about mini tour golf and how hard it is to make it the grind. You know, guys going from living out of the back of their car to winning the Waterloo Open to random sponsors putting money in guys' accounts in order to get through Q school. I thought it was a really cool follow. So I just kept doing it, kept liking everything that he was putting out there. And everything that I commented on, he would, retweet it, get back to me. And a grinder of his own, really, getting started, because with golf, it's just all the untold stories and people don't know how hard it is to make it or for guys to make ends meet out there. So, that's how I got to know Ryan. He made one of the greatest connections of my life with Jason from Sub 70, which now, do a lot of promoting for them with their clubs. I know the Honorable plays them. But Ryan, I mean, take us through a lot of your story, like I remember talking to you when you had, I think, 174 Twitter followers, and now I have no idea what it's up to. But take us through it, man. Like, what was it like getting started? Because I mean, it was a huge passion project.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, guys, thanks for having me on. And yeah, I mean, it's guys like yourself, Michael, that have, helped build this. Yeah, I played golf at Lansing Community College. I don't know if there's such a thing as good community college golf, but if there is, it was good community college golf. And then my wake-up call was, trying to walk on at Michigan State. So I grew up in a small northern Michigan town, not hard to be, but I was the best player up here. And then went to LCC and was okay. And then went to Michigan State thinking I could probably make the team, and I had no chance. I was playing pretty well, and I was going to be like the 10th man on a 5-man team. And like I said, I was playing good. So that was quickly a reality check that I had no business doing that. My dad and I, the core of the account is my dad and I used to take caddy trips and go caddy on a mini tour. So that was many years ago. We did that for many years in a row. And that kind of just gave me the insight of what pro golf was like for about 90% of the guys out there, and women too. So, I tell this story a lot, guys. Is the first time we went to a Canadian tour, and this was before it was associated with the PGA Tour. My dad and I's tradition when we did these trips was to camp, and I went in the public restroom at the camping place, and a player came next to me, and I was like, what are you doing here? Like a lot of people, I was like, you're a professional golfer. What are you camping for? And he's like, yeah, I pulled my pop-up camper across Canada, and this is how I make it work. And I was like, oh shit, this is different than what I thought. So that was kind of my insight. Fast forward many years, I was in the restaurant business. Our son Jackson, who's now 7, had brain surgery about 5 years ago. And I left my job, but with no intention of this ever being a thing, and started this Twitter account purely for selfish reasons, just to have something to do. We have we have a daughter also. So at the time it was, she was almost 4 and almost 2. So I started the Twitter account really to keep my sanity. Stay-at-home dad, and one kid who wasn't, healthy, and another kid who was, a typical 4-year-old. So I really started the Twitter account just to have something adult to do, like zero expectations. And I've never gone back to work somehow. I figured out a way after 3.5 years of not getting paid for it to make this work. It's just been a crazy ride. I pinch myself every day. I'll break this story here on this podcast. There's a rumor going around that the quote I made about the international team getting beat 21-0. I had a few beverages on on a on a podcast is being played in the international locker room.
Nice.
And
Nice.
Oh,
like
no.
that's so surreal. Like it's so surreal to think like it was really meant as a somewhat of a joke. It was a little bit by my own company that I work for, taken out of context. We were talking about whether all these guys lead for live and blah blah blah. And I mean, it's just surreal. I mean, again, I don't know what it is, but like the things I've been able to cover, and again, I say it all the time, guys, is no one was covering this. And as Michael knows, firsthand, because he was a player, is, a lot of these guys are looking for attention. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's like, hey, their life, the people don't know their life. They want this to be covered. They want people to know, because as Michael knows, you walk into your club and you're like, what do you mean you're not making any money? What do you mean you're broke? You're a pro golfer. So,
It's the worst.
I mean, I was lucky enough to find a niche that no one was covering.
And how did you? But it's one thing to cover a niche, right? Like I covered Division II basketball. I'm the voice of Cal Poly
It's not a
Humboldt
niche.
athletics, and you talk about the grind and people who aren't going pro. It's one thing to tell the stories, because I mean I know firsthand. I've seen it for years. There's so many amazing athletes and stories, and people trying to work the grind, and most don't make it. So I'm familiar with that. But then the flip side is finding an audience who wants to digest, because for years golf was Tiger Woods and the other guys. So to dig as far deep as that story, Ryan, that has to also talk about your storytelling ability. But obviously you got to entertain people with the fact of what is going on, and what do people enjoy from a consumer standpoint, what you're doing.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, JB, is that this just wasn't told, right? Like, and I say this a lot of times, guys, is like, we've all been to a minor league baseball game, right? Like, we know how minor league baseball players live because a lot of us have been there. But no one's been to a minor league golf, maybe a Corn Ferry event, very few, but below that, no one's ever been to a West Florida event. So it was really introducing them. And I just think that what I had going for me was that a lot of fans, and I still think that's true still, despite my account, is a lot of fans think of golf as a rich kid sport. And, it's, of course there is that. There's no doubt there's part of that. There is country club kids and all those kind of stuff, but there's a lot of kids who are grinding their ass off out there who haven't come from anything. And so I always say, Alan Shipnick told me, and, he said, Ryan, you have taught people to care about people that no one cared about, right? And I don't say that to brag or anything like that. It's like, I tell their stories. At the end of the day, no one knows who Mark Anguiano is, or, Mike Visacki is, or whatever. But my job is to tell them why we should care about them. And so I think it's important. I think it's an important part of sports. Now that it's come this far, my dream would be to have like a company where someone covers every sport. The end of the guy who signs the 10-day contract to play with the Dallas Mavericks and then goes back to playing in Albuquerque or whatever for $30,000 a year. I'd love to tell that guy's story, because he's doing the same thing a lot of pro golfers are doing. It's obviously different. You get a guaranteed paycheck and those kind of things, but he's grinding his ass off to follow his dream. So I think this can be told across many sports. I think people see, understandably, the mainstream media covers, especially in golf, the top guys. It's true across the board, but there's a guy on the Lakers who's the 12th or 15th man, and there's a guy 150th on the money list on the PGA Tour, and his life is not as glamorous as people think it is.
Ryan, you talk about the story, but I'd say the one thing that's different about golf, all the sports have guys or gals grinding, trying to make it. However, you talked about the minors, and the NFL's got the draft, and there are systems set up and ways to help develop and bring them along, where golf is completely different. You can be, we'll see what happens with the Live and David Puig, I believe, and guys like that. But for the most part, whether you're the number one golfer or you're the number one golfer on Lansing Community College, the path is the same to get to the big time. So that's got to come into it as well. I mean, golf is so unique, and I think that's where it's found itself in the world at the professional level now, but just talk about how different it is and what it's like to cover those guys. Cause you do have guys who are stars coming out of college and guys you've never heard of, but they're all having to take the same road to get to the top.
Yeah. I say it all the time, guys. I mean, golf is without a doubt the most democratic sport there is, right? Like, no one can tell you that you can't make it. Go shoot a score. There's plenty of times that happen at Monday qualifiers. The best players aren't getting through at Monday qualifiers all the time. But the best players on that day are, and you can go change your life in a week. That's the end of the story. That just doesn't happen in any other sport. There's no free throw contest to join the Lakers for a week. There's no, breakaway to play for the Red Wings. There isn't those things. The opportunity in golf is democratic. Sign up. Obviously, there's some prerequisites on the PGA Tour, but sign up for a Monday qualifier, pay $500, shoot the score, and you're going to be walking on the same fairways as Tiger Woods that week if he's playing, obviously. That's what I love about it. It's also the worst part about golf because there is plenty of players out there that think they can make it, and there's no one to tell them that they can't. And so they're out there, but I mean, that's how the guys keep grinding. I was just telling, this is a pretty great story, but Dennis Paulson was telling me a story about a pimp who used to play on mini tours and cheat back in the 80s. And he's like, I kind of let him cheat because I wanted him to get a check every once in a while because he was making my paycheck, right? So like I didn't want him to quit because I was taking his entry fee each week, basically. So those guys kind of make mini tours kind of, grind. But it's also, people always say, well, the guy at Class A baseball, isn't making any money either. That's true, except that his crappy hotel and his crappy food and his crappy bus ride are all paid for. And if he goes 0 for 4, he still gets his crappy paycheck. Yep. And so it's obviously not a glamorous life. I'm not trying to glamorize Class A baseball, but that dude who's maybe say he's to hit 300 for a month, he could literally go 0 for 20, for a week. He's not getting cut. He's still getting his paycheck. Michael goes and plays like crap at an outlaw event. He's out $1,500, and no one's there to go pat you on the back and say, "Oh, it's okay, man. We'll get him next week." You got to pony up another $1,500 and go, put your, And again, golfers, especially in this one, they're not realistic, right? Like Kenzie Wright, a girl who just got through a Monday qualifier at the LPGA tour, just spent her last $600 to go to this Monday qualifier. That's not reasonable. That's not what people do. No one should do that, right? That's like saying, hey, I'm going to go take my last $1,000 of my life and play one hand of blackjack. And, it's insane. It's not normal, but that's the mentality of golfers. And
that's what Ryan, I would love to hear some of the stories. Like you talked about a pimp, so we know how he's paying his entry fees. Yeah. Common thing I've heard around golf clubs is, guys go to country clubs and they sell stock in themselves, right? And try to get other members to buy in. And when they make it big or they're borrowing money, what are guys and gals doing? What are some of the interesting ways you've heard, or whether it's shit, I don't know, are they bartending at night and then going out? But what are some of those ways where people are, funding the grind before they either give up or do make it?
Valid parking cars.
Yeah.
Neil Johnson special right there.
Yeah. I've learned many of the inside tricks, and Michael's 100% right. Get into valeting, kids. If you're a pro golfer, valeting is hot. But they do anything, JB, and that includes selling shares of themselves. So that can be $1,000 a share, and it's unfortunate. It's gonna a season, if you want to play a decent mini tour season and pay some of your bills and be able to do it, chase it full time, you're gonna need $60,000. And people at the club have to understand. I remember my first look into pro golf was a guy who played for our high school team when I was a freshman. Went to the University of Michigan, had a good career there. Came home and raised $50,000, and it was gone, right? It was gone. And I was like, how is this guy not making, right? How is that not making it? And the people who invested in him here were like, well, where's my money? And now that I've obviously got into life, like if you're looking to make money, don't don't do it by backing a mini tour player. There's just no way to make money. The system's
Better luck with crypto.
yeah, yeah. You might as well put all your money in crypto and buy it at its highest than put it in a mini tour player. So a lot of guys sign shares. Some people are lucky enough to find one or two sponsors, and unfortunately, a lot of guys, because they're so desperate, sign these bad deals. There's some bad loan shark guys out there, that will sign guys to deals that they get 80% and they get 5% of their lifetime earnings. And I know of a couple guys who are on the PGA Tour paying 3% still, and they've been on tour multiple years, still paying it back to their original guy. So if there's anyone listening who's thinking about a playing career, just make sure you know what the hell you're doing. Sign it. Ask other players to give you a contract, and make sure people understand that are going to give you money that it's a long process. Most people don't make it. This is not a money-making deal. And how hard it is.
Yeah, the other thing a lot of players do is they get into caddying. A good mutual friend of Ryan and I is Alistair Doherty. Remember, I played with him when he won the Reno Open and got in the exemption of the Barracuda. And he didn't have a sponsor. He was caddying at the Madison Club or the Palms down in Palm Springs, and he would double bag it in the morning and then go out, take a card, and get as many holes as he could before dark. And it's a good way when you to meet people that take caddies at those clubs. He did Silverleaf this last winter, and I invited him out to play before he went back to the Dakotas tour. And he goes, "Hey, I got to go play tomorrow with a guy who's thinking about sponsoring me." And I'm going, "Go do it." And I think the guy ended up paying for all of his entry fees, for the summer, minus Q School. So that's another way that those guys go. And going back to what you said, golf is the most democratic sport. There's no draft. The PGA Tour, they always talk about grow the game, grow the game, grow the game. In your opinion, do you think that the PGA Tour has done a great job to grow the game in terms of hiking up the prices of Monday qualifiers, qualifying school, less spots coming out of Canada, not putting money into the Canadian, Latin American, PGA Tour China before it folded purses? What is your opinion on that?
Yeah, the PGA Tour just doesn't care about the bottom, and I understand it from the side of it's an endless vacuum. It will always be filled, right? Like there will never not be 700 guys at Q School, just never. Now they'll probably, they'll miss out on a guy who, again, I say it all the time. Max Homa almost lost his Corn Ferry card, right? He birdied the last four holes in a row to go back to Q School. He goes back to Q School. No one really knows what happens from there. Plenty of good players have gone back to Q School and never been heard from again. Joel Damon, basically grinded his ass off on Canadian Tour, then went to the Corn Ferry Tour and didn't do it. So I think the PGA Tour, because they don't care about the bottom, because they keep this, next year, Q School's gonna be $10,000 next year, 100%. It's not going to be close. There's gonna be 5 tour cards on the line. It's $6,500. It was $3,200 9 years ago. It's $6,500. It's double. Because A, they know people will pay it, and B, they don't care. The bottom of the. Go ahead. Sorry, Jamie.
No, I'm sorry. I'm going to let you finish, Ryan.
No, they just don't care.
But are they going to have to step their game up? Because if you see David Puigs and the top golfers, the All-Americans, if they're getting sucked up by the LIV, do you really want? The NFL would not just give away the first round of the draft and say, "Hey, we're fine with rounds 2 through 7, and the XFL can go ahead and have Trevor Lawrence and the stars coming out of college." And if I'm a college kid and I'm a star, I don't want to have to grind like those suckers who are number 700.
Yeah, unfortunately, it'll become more of a closed door. They have to keep those players, and because of that, they're going. PGA Tour U now gives you a status on Corn Ferry. I'm going to suspect by the end of next year, the PGA Tour U are going to go directly to the PGA Tour, because Like if you're the number one player on PGA Tour U and Liv is offering you X amount of millions, or you can go play on the Corn Ferry and play in Wichita, Kansas. Listen, no offense to Wichita, Kansas, but you can play at a no-cut event and make $10 million to sign off. No one's not doing it. No one.
And you don't have to stay at a campground.
Yeah,
Right.
and you don't have to be the guy in the public restroom. Like no one's
I have
doing it.
PTSD from Wichita, Kansas. You tweeted out a story a little while ago. Andrew Yoon. You were
Yeah.
talking about him. He was coming up. I think he was a year after me in college, coming up, and you're like, never forget Andrew Yoon shot like 84 in a Monday qualifying at Wichita at Sand Creek Station. And I look it up, and it was like me and Wade Binfield right behind him. I don't even know if Wade's still playing, but that was the one where there was one score under par. The other three, no, two were even. The other couple were like one over, and they were the first group off. It blew 50 miles an hour. I played with Reen Gibson. Okay.
Yeah.
Reen put on a ball striking exhibition, like the best I've ever seen anyone hit it in a 50-mile-an-hour wind and missed by one because he double bogeyed 16, which was a par 5. I've never felt so bad for somebody grinding. And then you fast forward to a couple years ago when that fight broke out.
Yes.
I mean, that was crazy. There's some demons at Sand Creek Station. I don't know what it is.
Yes, and actually, there's a tie-in to the fight. Derek Fribbs, who was the third guy.
Wait, time out. We tell us about this fight.
I'm sorry for all the people listening at home who want to know the story. Okay, golfers are fighters. All right, golfers are fighters.
This story was the biggest story I've ever written until the cheating story,
which we will get to next.
But I had worked a ton of Mondays in a row. I had just started for Fire Pit, and like I was just like I was cashed, and there was only a to be fair, let me rephrase that because that's ridiculous. I tweet about golf, but I was tired. Okay, so there was no PGA Tour Monday, and there was just a Corn Ferry. So I was like, I'm going to take the day off. I put the link up, and I was sitting out in the backyard with my family, and a guy who I know who's very connected in the Wichita area calls me and says, "Hey man, there's a fight at the Monday qualifier." And he said, "I'm watching right now. The cops are following the other guy who was in the group, the third guy, down the 10th hole and getting his statement about what happened." And I was like, "Dude, come on, you're fucking with me. I know you are. Like, this cannot be true." And he's like, "Dude, I swear." I was like, I'm getting punked. And the whole story is insane. The player put the other guy in a headlock, made him say uncle. The father was swinging a putter around so the other people couldn't get in the fight to break it up. I mean, it was like every detail I heard, the more people I talked to, it got more and more insane.
And the dad was yelling, "Put him to sleep, put him to sleep."
Yeah. I mean, I had no, like, it was my first foray into a big story. And I remember it being on Fox News, like not like a local channel, like on Fox News's website. And I was like, oh shit, this has gotten quite sideways here. And so anyway, that guy, the third guy in the group, Derek Fribbs, just got DQ'd from Q School for signing a wrong scorecard. And he was
I don't
-10.
understand how that happens.
Neither do
I don't understand how that happens. I mean, I've signed a million scorecards and I've never been disqualified.
Yes.
I don't get it. Michelle, we signed a wrong scorecard one time. I don't get it. But for those of you too, I mean, you're talking about your buddy who was given a statement to the police. Number 10 at Sand Creek Station is a 600-yard par 5 double dogleg with water everywhere that plays into the wind. So that is the last hole you want to be giving your statement to the police on as you're walking down after you just saw a guy get choked out.
Was anyone arrested? Did any of them make the cut?
Yeah, you know what? None made the cut. One guy was arrested. The other guy withdrew because he was hurt. And Derek, poor Derek had no chance, you know, the other guy in the group. I mean, once that happens, your day's probably spent. It was a wild, it was wild until, it was the wildest thing I've ever covered until last week.
Well, yeah, and it's a great story, and that's where you got on my radar screen, right? Because you know, everyone's got our golf boys and your text chains. And let's just say you went viral on all the text change with this story that's just amazing about. I mean, there's cheating, and then there's cheating.
Just shut up, fuck.
Yeah. I mean, I've never like another it kind of happens. I was flying home from San Diego. The fire pit office is in San Diego. I flew into the little hometown where I live, tiny little airport. I land and I get a text message from a guy in Nebraska and says, he says, "You're never gonna believe this." And I remember texting him back and saying, "Hey man, I get this text a lot, you know, and sometimes I actually believe it, you know." And he's like, he sends me a picture, and there's 5 or 6 guys standing over by a woods, and he goes, "This guy just got DQ'd for cheating. They're talking about balls laying, you know, in this woods and where it was." And I mean, it just went off from there. Yeah, so Matt, they went back and found his ball that he said he had found, and then the next day the Nebraska PGA section went out and found 2 more balls from the 3rd round or the 2nd round that were that where the playing partners that he had talked to or he had played with had questioned whether he had really found a couple balls. So 3 total balls found. And then the stories from there just kind of, I mean, this guy has, you know, allegedly had 36 holes in one.
And weren't like 8 of them on par fours?
Yeah, 8 of them
I mean,
on
that
par
to me,
four.
I mean, that's comedy. That is pure comedy gold.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, he's an expert. Like this is not like he does it in every tournament he's played. Basically, he has some sort of holdout. I mean, 2 months ago, or last year, in a paid pro-am. I mean, it was very legitimate. In fact, Bryson Nimmer won the event. I mean, this is like a legitimate pro-am. He had an albatross, a hole-in-one on a par 4, and 3 hole-out eagles. Like, what?
And so I assume there's rumors running around about this guy, right? And then finally they just had enough.
There has been a lot. You know, what was the most surprising thing is, like, I talked to a player who played with him during, I mean, I talked to tons of people. I've never talked to more people about a story in my life. But what would happen, JB, is I would talk to him and I would say, I mean, I talked to a very good friend of mine who's a player, and he's like, "Ryan, I played with him. It was legit hole-in-one on a par 4. It was in this Sand Valley, you know what happened." And then he called me back a half an hour later and was like, "You know what, man? It was kind of weird. I just talked to the guy we played with, and we were both to the right. We couldn't find the ball, and he's the one who found it in the hole. And, you know, I didn't know, I never saw it." And that would happen over and over and over again. You know, I talked to, there was an article in the Golf Digest magazine, and there was a picture of some score. So the article was from 2017. He had made 3 holes in one in an 8-day stretch, 2 on par 4s. And there was there's pictures of the scorecards. And I got a message from a follower that was like, "Hey, Ryan, my best friend's name is on those scorecards, and he didn't play with him." You know, it's just, it has been wild. It has been really, really wild. I definitely have gotten some notes of like, "Hey, I'm really surprised. I know this guy," but also others like, "Yep, happened in high school. Yep, happened in college." You know, it is the wildest of wild stories for sure.
Well, that is
That's
crazy.
great.
You think about golf too, when it has self-policing really and not
Yeah.
referees, especially at that level. I mean, I've never been to a Monday qualifier or even a Corn Ferry event. I would assume, Mikey, that they're probably not rules officials following every group around.
No, there's not, but it's crazy because, like, yeah, there is self-policing. There's guys that sit there and say, "Hey, I made a 4 here," and you go, "Well, I kind of saw you take, like, did you hit your ball in the hazard? Oh no, I found it." Like, real, well, that's weird. You know, like, you hit a
Yeah.
Callaway into the fescue and made a par with a TaylorMade. I don't understand that at all, right? And I mean, that happened to me a couple of times, and Ryan knows the story. The last time I did Q school in 2019, I almost got in a fist fight with Chase Hanna out there at Dayton Valley because he tried to call me for a rules infraction that Paul Amondi, who's been on and off the Corn Ferry Tour for 15 years, I asked him up on the green, my ball's in a sprinkler head. I take my measurement sideways. I can't drop it on the green, but the slope is like a 6% grade going this way. So I measure it, I look at it, I drop it, rolls onto the green, drop it again, rolls onto the green. I place it. And I'm literally getting ready to putt. And he starts yelling from 30 yards back in the fairway that I picked up a live ball because I didn't measure properly. And he said, well, you measured your club here, which is perpendicular, but it should actually measure here, which was like 2 inches in front of where it was. And so I picked up a live ball. And that's when I lost my shit. And I said, I picked my ball up on the fucking green. I go, it rolled 6 feet. There's nothing I can do about it. I said, not to mention, you can't even see where you are. I go, if you want to argue this, go get a rules official. I'll tell him exactly what happened. And Paul Amandi has said 0 words all day. And he comes over to me as we're walking from the 18th green to 1, because we started in the back, and he goes, that was the most inappropriate thing that I've ever seen. And then so on and so forth. We go throughout the end of the round. Number 8 at Dayton Valley is a dogleg right, dogleg left, par 5 with water. Chase hits his ball in the hazard off the tee, drops, plays another one, hits it in the hazard again right. I'm literally getting ready to hit a wedge shot from 40 yards. And right when I take the club back, he yells, "Hey, Mike." And I stop and I look over and go, "What?" And he goes, "Hey, I think my ball crossed here. Is it okay if I drop here?" And I said, "I don't know, Chase, you're the rules expert. Why don't you do whatever the fuck you want to?" And then he stared at me and I stared at him, and I'm like, listen, this is my last time doing Q school. If I get in a fight out here, it's going to be with this guy. So I was talking to Ryan about the story, and he sent me a link of like a month later, and he said justice is served because Chase had shot like 85 in the last stage of European Q school to miss his card. And I'm like, you know what? I've never ill wish anybody. I hope that unless they're a cheater like this guy or the other guy get in a fight, I don't know which golfers. I hope they all do well, but that was something that was so out of line with me, and I had no patience for it, and I felt like justice was served. But you know what? I hope he's a great guy.
Yeah,
Just,
really.
just not. If he gets the yips, I wish him the best.
I wouldn't wish that on anyone, for the record, as someone who owns a nasty, nasty case of those. And
Oh my
No,
God.
you
Trust
don't.
me. No, I have the chipping yips that it's unreal.
Well, so I'm actually curious, as a total hack, as the guy who like wonders, do you ever see guys on the mini tour events or on the qualifiers just catch the fucking yips mid round?
Yeah, I had a long conversation. I mean, many people have done it, but I had a really long conversation with Kyle Thompson, who's won 5 times on the Korn Ferry Tour and got to the PGA Tour and had the full blown putting yips. I mean, standing over a 3-footer, he couldn't make them. He couldn't make them. And, to the point that he would, just try to jam it in the hole from 25 feet, knowing that he was better off from 10 feet than he was from 3 feet. I mean, that is it. I have never really, obviously I'm not a pro or whatever, but like, I just played 36 holes, made in this like amateur event, made 7 birdies. So I birdied like, a 5th of 7th of my holes, did not have a single penalty stroke, did not lose a single ball, and shot 81, 84.
Yeah,
there was one time I hit 3 chips, 9 combined feet. I mean, like
I only laugh because I feel your pain, man. I only laugh because I feel it.
Like I'm like a good amateur golfer. Like I'm okay. I'm not great. Like if I didn't have the chipping yips, I'd be like a 2 or 3. I'm like good. I am like a 25 handicap standing over a chip that is so straightforward that like when I was playing good or didn't have the yips, I'd be like, well, I'm going to get this up and down a good amount of times. At the worst, I'm going to make bogey. I mean, it's horrible. I can't imagine doing it as a living and having them, because it would, I mean,
yeah, you've borrowed other people's money. You're sitting in a campground. Yeah. So what's it like when you see guys, you've been covering this for so long now, someone who's been around junior college sports and stuff, you would see guys with all the talent, but didn't have the brains, or the people who worked their ass off, had all the brains, but they were shit for talent. Do you see a common denominator of people that are making it, or is it just, the things kind of fall where they may and guys happen to maybe catch fire at the right time or not?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's all about I think a lot of it is, playing well at the right time. The golf is very unique from the standpoint of, yes, you have opportunities during Mondays, but basically you have to play well 3 weeks a year, and that's in Q school, right? Like then that opens up a ton of opportunities where you can play consistently without having to, worry about, like in Monday qualifiers, your Monday qualifier, the pressure is there that you don't have next week. So get through Q school, you can have multiple weeks in a row, so you can have a bad week and get it. And some guys just aren't good at Q school. I use Brandon Brown all the time. Brandon was on the Hooters tour, dominated there forever. By all accounts, was very, very good. If you dominated on the Hooters tour, Kevin Kisner didn't even play well on the Hooters tour. Keegan Bradley. I mean, the Hooters tour was the who's who of who's out there now. I mean, it was
Billy
world
Horschel
class.
played, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean Horschel.
Ted Potter Jr.
Yeah, I mean it's endless amounts. And Russell Knox played out there forever.
Yeah. You know who did play? I played with the other day was Joe Affronti.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that list that you sent out on Twitter, he
Yeah.
was number 4 on the money list, right? He's
Yeah,
behind Keegan and Ted Potter. So I took a screenshot and texted to him, and he goes, "Man, I totally forgot about that." But I mean,
Yeah.
he was talking about just the grind in Florida, man. I mean, just the heavy Bermuda and stuff. And I mean, Joe's probably 5'6",
Yeah.
5'7". He's a short guy.
Spartan.
Yeah.
But what
Yeah,
a
so-
player, man.
Yeah, so Brandon's a great example. Like, just couldn't get through Q school. Like, but there's no argument that he had the talent. Like, he was beating guys who have won on tour now, repeatedly. I mean, Norman Jung was the best amateur player in the entire world until recently. Like, he signed a $9 million deal with Callaway and couldn't crack an egg anywhere. Like, mini tours, pre-Qs, anything. No, obviously he's come back. So, I think it's just, I don't know if there's a common denominator, but Q school is obviously the indicator that you have to get through at some point.
So here you are. You've made a great career now covering this, the grind, we'll call it, for golf. Jay
Mhm.
Monahan calls you tomorrow and says, "Hey Ryan, I think I want to tinker with how we get our guys from out of amateur to the PGA Tour." Are you saying, "Hey, this is awesome the way it is," or what adjustments or recommendations, or if they made you king of the tour for the day, would you do to see guys make the transition from amateur status to the top tour?
Here's what I would do, and obviously I'm very biased, JB. Here's what the tour does a very, very, very poor job of, is telling stories about the players that are coming up. And here's my example. Will Zalatoris graduates off the Korn Ferry Tour, goes to the US Open, finishes 6th, and everybody's like, "Who's this Will Zalatoris?" Will Zalatoris has been the best player in the country since he was 12 years old. Like, no one should quite. He went to a great university. He was a top amateur when he was a kid. He was a top amateur in college. He was a top amateur or top pro when he got onto the Korn Ferry Tour. And we get to the US Open and he finishes 6th, and people go, "Oh, this is out of the blue." No, it's not. Like, he's one of the best players since he was 12 years old. That's on the tour. They're not telling the stories of these guys. Like, that's it. Like, let golf be golf and tell the stories. Like, that is what has made my account successful. Everyone has a story. Joel Damon's one of the most popular guys out there. Max Homa, those guys had very real struggles, almost lost their card. Joel lost his card a ton of times. Tell that story. Joel just told the story of losing his mom and, having testicular cancer, and his brother had cancer. Like, tell those stories.
And I get the feeling, Ryan, that the PGA is trying to put that on the players by saying, "Hey, we're going to give you a bonus if you get the X amount of Twitter followers." And you talk about Homa and Damon; those guys are really good on Twitter, but you shouldn't have to be a social media star to get your story told, right?
Exactly. That's the tour's handing off the job of telling stories. Like, that's what you do, right? Like, again, I understand, like, you're going to give Tiger Woods and the top players some leeway. Totally understand it. I get it. But guys like Joel or Max, Max is obviously, his career is taken off, has 5 wins, but doesn't have a major, those kind of things. If he should have some leeway, but not a ton of leeway, right? The next guy up, just tell his story. Make people, again, I go back to, tell me why I should care about this guy, right? And it is a hard story to tell of why. It's like, take Liv. Take Liv for what it is. It's not my kind of golf, like no cut events, large, but I don't fault anyone for going over there. Like, if Liv called tomorrow and said, "Hey Ryan, you want to come cover qualifiers for $5 million?" I'm very moralistic until, like, someone just yeah, see ya, right?
What time's the jet coming to get me?
Yeah. But I just rich getting richer doesn't have a lot of interest, but tell the stories too. Like, Dustin Johnson doesn't have a perfect life. Tiger Woods doesn't have it. Go tell the stories. And, that's why I love covering the guys I cover is you just get pure honesty. They don't have anyone to answer to. They're just going to tell you, hey, this sucks or that sucks or or this is great or that's great. Like so if I was in charge of the tour, I would make it's getting more and more closed door. And I understand some of the closed door factor. You obviously don't want a point where it's like, oh, like Tiger Woods is not eligible for this event, right? Like Tiger Woods should be eligible for whatever event he wants, whatever. So, but you wanted some open door. You like create stars. Again, I go back to Will Zalatoris. The fact that everyone goes, oh, I mean, the tour put out a thing like Cam Young went from Monday qualifying to the President's Cup team, which is very true. And it's been a meteoric rise. Same thing though. He's the best player since he was 10 years old. Like This isn't like a surprise. No one's like, oh my God. And people saying like, oh my God, who's Cam Young? Like Cam Young's been great since he was 10 years old. Like no one was like, oh, he's definitely not going to be on the PGA Tour. Like
I mean, Zalatoris went to what, like Dallas Trinity or whatever it is down there, where the head coach is a retired mega millionaire and flies the team private to all these national tournaments. And forgive me for saying this, JB, but driving to high school golf tournaments in your Jetta was not exactly the same. But I mean,
that was my girlfriend at the time's Jetta, for the record.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah, that's right. You
guys were going to fit in the 81 Corvette coupe.
Yeah, or on the motorcycle. But yeah, I mean, it's those guys have been around a while. It's even like Scotty Scheffler. He won the Western Am out there in Chicago, and people were like, "Oh my God, who's this guy?" He's been one of the best players in Texas for years. John Peterson, when he came out of LSU, one of the best players and ball strikers out there. He won the individual national championship at LSU, and people are going, "Oh my God, who's this guy?" And I'm going, he's dominated college golf for the last 3 years.
Yeah,
like, where the hell have you been?
Yeah, I'm always stunned, JB. So you can't get to the PGA Tour. That will change a little bit next year. You can get 5 people can get directly from Q School to the PGA Tour, but you can't get to the PGA Tour without going to the Korn Ferry Tour. So your money, if you're at the PGA Tour, a large portion of your money should be to introduce the next stars on the Korn Ferry Tour. Like no one should be surprised from Will Zalatoris or Cam Young. Like no one. Like go market those people. They are like, obviously Will just has back problems, so if that hinders his career, but by all accounts, he's on a rise to be a superstar, right? He's a young dude, won already. Like,
well, I know who Justin Herbert was when he comes out. I mean, I think the NFL does a great job, and I can pick my bones with baseball and basketball and letting guys out of high school. But say what you want, the stories when they come to the NFL. So that leads me to another question. I know we're getting tight on time. The stories. I look at NASCAR, right? Different sport, but individual.
Is that even a sport?
Dale Earnhardt. You got all these guys. It's wildly popular. Jimmy Johnson dominates the sport for like 7 years. The sport fucking disappears because the guy has zero personality, has nothing to say, and he's just a machine. Now, this is rude of me to say, and I hope it's not the case, but Scotty Scheffler kind of reminds me of this guy, and I worry about golf. It's like, what if the best player in the world is a total stick in the mud?
Hey, Michael, I hate to tell you this, but I was in the room for for my first major ever, the press room. And not that people are rooting against Scotty, because he's, by all accounts, a very nice dude and like family guy, but by all accounts, a wonderful dude. But he's relatively boring. And
sure he is.
And all the writers were like, "Oh man, I don't know what I'm going to write."
Well, listen. I mean, the guy is what the number 1 golfer in the world for a while, wins the Masters and all that. He got married way too young, in my opinion. Like live the tour life for a little while, right? Or do something. But the thing I like about Scotty is he looks like he's 40. He looks. I'm like, do it for dad bods everywhere, Scotty. Like, his hat doesn't quite fit properly. He's a little bit nerdy on that front, but it's like he seems like just a regular dude versus DJ, who's like, hey man, so I was lifting a jet ski the other day. I got freaking my back hurt, whatever. My buddy, and JB knows who he is, but he designs the golf balls for TaylorMade. And back in the day, before DJ was married to Paulina, he was in there doing the golf ball testing, and he's trying to get answers out of DJ of what he thinks. And it was like talking to a caveman. And they had this intern come in. She was working, she was a student at San Diego State, and she's smoking hot. And she comes in the room, and DJ just turns and goes, "What's up, girl? How you doing?" He just goes, well, he's like, hey DJ, I need you to talk to me about the golf ball. And DJ, he was like squirrel, like just completely infatuated with this chick. And then he's like going try and talk to her, and she's like, "Who are you?" He goes, "Oh, play a little golf and stuff. Like, you want to go to dinner tonight?" She's like, "I have a boyfriend." Like, see you later. But at least DJ's got a little bit of that.
But he's entertaining. And it's like the Paulina coming out when he wins the Masters, awesome, right? Like, he's married to Wayne Gretzky's daughter. In the end, we're going to watch golf no matter what. But the reason these guys are rich is because it's fucking entertainment. And if my mom and dad are going to tune in on a Sunday, it better be something interesting, because Scotty Scheffler ain't moving the needle.
No, he's not. But I mean, Will Zalatoris, we'll get right back to you, Ryan, but Will Zalatoris on the golf course moves the needle, but I haven't seen anything exciting from that guy off the golf course either.
But like, listen, but Will's a little bit more outspoken. But here's my point about Liv. Liv has taken a lot of the, like, quote unquote villains is way too strong of a word, because there's no such thing in golf. But like, Liv has taken a lot of the villains that have made people, like, we love to hate Bryson. Like, we loved it. And like, it drew people to golf. Like I said it when he was on the PGA Tour, it's like, guys, like, you can hate him. I don't like him. His personality is obviously off-putting. The rope incidents is a perfect look into who he is.
Great.
But he was great for golf. Like, people,
he moved the needle.
Yep, people moved in. Like, he was the offset to Scotty Scheffler, right? Like, everybody would be rooting for Scotty Scheffler like crazy if it was Bryson and Scotty coming down, Augusta on 18th. That's kind of gone now. Like, they've taken a lot of the villains, and I really think that golf needs villains, and I think that it's an under talked about side of Liv. They've taken a lot of the villains, and that helped the PGA Tour model. Just did. Like, people like to say, "Oh, Bryson doesn't matter anymore." 6 months ago, we were all like watching Bryson trying to drive the ball over the, out of the green at the Arnold Palmer, right? Like,
that was like the last must-watch moment of golf lately, when he was fired it up across that pond. Like, you had to stop and watch. For me, it was like a Barry Bonds moment, another guy who people hated. Patrick Reed, people hate, but regardless, you have an opinion about him.
Yeah, I mean, and like President's Cup, like, it's going to be boring anyway. It looks like, but like, Patrick Reed was like stirred the pot. I hated him, and he was on, quote unquote, my team, right? Like, but he was yelling and whatever. Like, he made Ryder Cups and President's Cups fun because he was an asshole, and so, like, we're missing him. Like, we miss him. Like, do I miss his personality? No, but do we miss him in the golf? Yeah. It's like all there is to it. Like, he was the asshole, and now that there's no good asshole right now.
Well, so would you say that you spiced up the President's Cup based off your drunken take? Like you're like, this is gonna be boring. They have nobody on paper that's good, unless it's your boy Corey Connors. Yeah, we always root for. Right?
Listen, here's the full context of that statement. Is one, we were talking prior to it of, like, Alan said Cam was good. This is before Cam signed. Like, Cam was going, Leishman was going. There was rumors Adam Scott was going, and then we said, and Alan said one more international player that he had rumors that were going, but he didn't say it because he didn't know who. Like, he didn't know 100% he was going. So I was like, if all those four guys go, like, and obviously I'm the guy who's saying, like, the guy in the mini tour is good, so I don't think they suck. But compared to the top guys, they suck. I mean, I got calls from agents, calls from managers. I mean, people were mad.
Look at you moving the needle.
Mad. I was like, you guys, you got to lighten up. Like, it's first of all, it's like Americans.
You're the Patrick Reed of Twitter for the international team.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we got Ryan Patrick Reed French.
Yeah, when Immelman retweeted it, I was like, "Oh,
that was great.
This is going to get a little sideways." I mean, it seemed to be all in good fun, with those guys, but some guys were not any players. Most players took it very, very well, but some, as it is Twitter, some people were very angry. And there is reports again that it's being played in the locker room, which is insane. That's insane. And
Your
the fact
fans.
that anyone cares what I have to say, enough to play it in the locker room, and it's obviously not working, unfortunately, because it looks like the international team's getting beat pretty handily.
Yeah, I mean they are, but the so tonight in our league, which is where I'm going after this, we got a couple PJ Tour guys coming out to play. One of the most famous people, though, however, has the greatest stories is Trevor Immelman's caddy when he won the Masters. Just bought a house on the golf course and has played in our league several times. Should I ask him about what he thought about your comments, and do you want me to have him FaceTime you?
Well, let's have them both on the pod, Mike. Come on, think about it.
Yeah, yeah.
Entertainment, move the needle.
Oh my God. I mean,
Yeah.
can you imagine having that and then back it up with like,
Oh,
Sean
man.
O'Hare talking after half a bottle of Casa Azul? I'm not so sure.
I love it. I love it. Hey, Ryan, where can people find you on Twitter to get the content?
Yeah, Monday Q Info, and then Fire Pit Collective is where I write. That's where I'll obviously put it out on Twitter. So Fire Pit Collective and Monday Q Info on Twitter.
I'm going to finish with one question real quick. I'm sorry. Being in media, I know you're focusing on the guys making the PGA Tour. Matt and Alan, they're covering it all. What's it been like in the media with this from a coverage standpoint, the reaction you're getting and how you guys are kind of wading through the waters of covering both LIV and the PGA?
I mean, listen, everybody likes to complain, including us about this. It is a great time to be in golf. This is for a casual golf fan, this is normally this time of year, outside of like this week, maybe the President's Cup, is a very boring time in golf, right? Like for me, there's Q School, those kind of things, but no one really cares about the fall events. Like, listen, this has been great. It's a great time to have a golf media company. I mean, a great time. Like people are very angry on one side or the other. So, but we try our best, guys. One of the greatest qualities I think of Fire Pit, I hope, is what people think is that we are the truly only independent golf media. There's some obviously like Andy Friday does a great job, but he just doesn't really do a ton of like mainstream media stuff. But Golf Digest has some ties, and Tour and Golf Magazine has
watching
some.
Golf Channel is disgusting when you've got the biggest
Oh.
stories going on in golf and they're
Right.
fucking talking about an
Yeah.
amateur women's event in Sheboygan. It's like, come on. I tune to the Golf Channel because I want golf. I just wish they'd change the name to the PGA Golf Channel.
Yeah. So I mean, we are independent. Like again, I don't like LIV, but I would be lying to people if I didn't say like, DJ in the playoff, like that was like a very real moment, right? Like the PGA Tour should be very scared of that moment. Like that's my, like, it's not my job. I cover different guys, but Alan wrote a story is like, hey, his personal feelings are probably like LIV hasn't been great, but he wrote a story that was like, dude, that was a really good tournament. Like that was a really good tournament. And
I think it
PGA
makes
Tour
the majors even
Yeah.
better. I mean, the majors are going to be lit
Yes.
now when those guys go at it.
100%. 100%. I think, I hope that we do a good job of covering it down the middle. It's a wild time to be in media, no matter what you write. Like, I just wrote a tweet about Pat Perez, like struggling, and it turned into this whole thing. Like, you can't write
Oh,
LIV or PGA Tour in a tweet without being like, oh, what does the tour pay you? Or are the Saudis paying you? Like, hey,
it's
no
so
one's
bad.
paying me. Like,
Well,
no
you
one's
got
paying me.
into it. You got into it back when. I mean, before we let you go, I'll just tell you this. Tell the listeners this story. Before you were big and you were paying for shit out of your own pocket when you were being a waiter, slupping mozzarella sticks to unhappy people, and there was a Cleveland Strixon rep. I'm not going to mention his
Oh,
name
yeah.
because everybody has blocked that drunk asshole on Twitter. So he comes after you and he said, Ryan, you were so much better before you started doing it for the money, you piece of shit. And I'm like, you know what? That's absolute bullshit. I just got off the phone with Ryan 4 days ago, and he's trying to pay the bills and give himself something to do, paying for everything out of his own pocket, and you're a flippin' asshole. I then got in a personal Twitter battle with this guy over something that, oh, you know what it was? It was Keegan Bradley at the WGC match play doing his aim point and then missing a 3-footer by 8 inches. That took him a minute and a half to putt. I said, this is bullshit. I'm so tired. And all I did was like agree with somebody who wrote the opinion. This so said guy comes back after me again and he's like, you know what, you're such a piece of shit and blah blah blah. I literally see him at the NCAAs at Greyhawk. I got all my sub 70 stuff on, and he comes up and says hi to me, and I'm thinking he's gonna talk to me about it. He had no clue who I was. He had no clue, and I'm like, I knew he was hitting the bottle again and doing whatever, but you know, rest in peace. I've had a lot of friends from the Midwest come after me about that know this guy. And it's just one of those things that you're talking about golf media. You go after one thing and the guy just blows you up. And I'm like, listen, I'm entitled to my opinion. The Fire Pit Collective, what I enjoy reading about it is that it's independent. It's opinions. It's what you write. I mean, obviously stuff's gonna be factually backed up, but that's what gets the juices flowing is when you have the opinions. What you did with the international team, everybody knows that you're joking, but you get those hardos that are just going, oh, you know, I can't believe you'd say that. I'm like, dude, they're not playing in the locker room. You're the biggest villain of freaking the President's Cup right now.
And here's what I'll say about the President's Cup before. It was like, there's people out there suggesting that it shouldn't be the President's Cup, that it should be, you know, we should change it to the half LPGA, half thing. Like that should be more offensive to the President's Cup than some guy who covers Monday qualifiers saying that the team is going to stink. Like they're saying very nicely, like this event is so bad, we should change it. And I just said that they're going to get beat this year and they're mad at me. Like, so I would go after Paul McGinley and all those guys who were like, yeah, this is so bad, we need to change it to LPGA half and half, you know? So like, anyway, I'm very, very lucky. Yes, there's Twitter haters out there. That has grown as it has now become a paying job. People feel more entitled to fire at me, but that's okay.
It's taking the place of the bathroom wall, that's for sure.
Exactly right.
Hey, Ryan, great job. Keep up the work. Really appreciate you taking time today, and means a lot, and always welcome, and we'll be following and keep up the great stories. So we know when the next Will Zalatoris shows up, I won't have to go, who the hell is this guy?
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on.
He's Ryan French. He is Michael Dominic, aka Semi-Pro, and he's got in-law duty and league tonight. So hit him straight. I'm JB Mathers, the Honorable. It's the Principal. Talk to everyone later. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
I'm gonna get my dick kicked in by O'Hare and Wyndham Clark tonight. I just know it.
See ya.
Hey, air raids, baby.
Hey, I have to tell you one story real quick before you go, Ryan. So John Cook is on the waiting list at our club down here.
Yeah.
So I played with him last Monday, and we were talking about the Patrick Reed filing a lawsuit against Brandel Chambly.
Yeah.
And he goes, "What's he going to sue him for? A can of hairspray and a low duck hook?"
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Ryan,
guys.
thanks for coming on, man. That was awesome.
See you later.
All right, see you, boys.